are April and Scott, creators of naughtygym.com, and this is The Naughty Gym Show.
For years, we've been fitness and nutrition coaches to thousands of people through our commercial gyms and online platform. We've also spent nearly a decade in an ever-evolving open relationship.
This show brings together two of our biggest passions, fitness and sex positivity. Our mission is to maximize the physical and mental health of anyone brave enough to explore relationship structures that run counter to societal norms.
We have demolished our old ways of thinking about relationships, and from that rubble, built a life full of happiness, adventure, and vitality. And now we want to help you do the same.
So hop on the treadmill, start the show, and let us teach you how to never stop playing. Guys, April and Scott here with Naughty Gym, and this is our first official podcast episode. So we've been doing a vlog for a while on YouTube, but we wanted to find a way to be able to get more information into more people's ears. Yeah, and we're tired of getting banned in warnings on social media. So
and
on a podcast would be a great way.
We like putting things in people's holes.
In their ear holes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you, we've been doing it on camera, but for some reason I'm a little more nervous about this because it feels more like official with the podcast. Are you nervous about this?
I'm not nervous.
Okay, well, awesome.
But I also will never listen to this again.
And I'll have to because I've got to edit it. So, so we're going to start today. Our first episode is going to be me interviewing April.
Not necessarily interviewing. We're just going to have a conversation.
Well, we're going to have a conversation.
That's so formal.
Yeah, well, maybe an informal interview. But I'm going to ask you a series of questions that I've prepared ahead of time because we want to try and dig into your story. And actually, some of these, I'm not sure I'll know everything you're going to say or how you're going to answer all of these questions. So it'll be an interesting way to kind of explore how you went from a little girl to the person you are now. All right. And we'll backtrack on some of these questions, but the first question I want to ask is, what first got you interested in consensual non-monogamy? Because obviously you didn't start with an interest in it.
Yeah.
How did you?
Okay, Barbara Walters. So it started just when I met you, exploring, having conversations, open conversations. For the first time in my life, I was able to talk openly about my sexual desires, my fantasies, and really, I was at a place in my life where I had already made up my mind that I was going to be 100% honest with my partner and be selfish in the fact that I wasn't going to be in a relationship where I couldn't 100% be myself. And you gave me space to do that. And so you had brought up some scenarios and some places that you had gone. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And that just kind of got the ball rolling.
But it never seemed like something, I think for a lot of people when they first start talking about consensual non-monogamy, it is a very nerve-wracking, oh my goodness, I can't believe you just asked me that. I don't want to touch this subject. Are you wanting to have sex with other people? Am I not enough for you? All these things. Mm-hmm. It never really, at least from my perspective, seemed like it was that way for you. You had a genuine sort of innocent curiosity about it all from the beginning.
Yeah, I think I have more of those conversations internally. And then once I come to a conclusion, that's what you hear a lot of the time. So a lot of times I'm doing the work internally. And then it comes out polished in the finished product.
Okay, so early on in our relationship, you were already internally thinking about having sex with other people.
Oh, absolutely. I've been thinking about that my whole life.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Well, so there was I had a lot of shame around sexuality from, coming out of the church, coming out of a marriage where it just wasn't really talked about, and really being raised in an environment where sexuality was shameful. And so, I was approaching the age of 40. I had come out of a failed marriage for 18 years. And for those 18 years, I was having those dialogues and like the what if I could do this and this is what I desire, and I just wasn't talking to anybody about it. So it wasn't new for me.
All right. Well, so go to you brought up your childhood there. You weren't raised, even though you weren't brought up in the South where we live now. You were raised in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
but you still weren't around things like this. You didn't have a family, parents that were involved in any of this, or you didn't know people, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no.
So there was no exposure to it as a child, correct?
Right.
And because sometimes people may ask that, well, you must have been raised around liberal parents or something. That's how you felt free enough to get involved with it. So it was nothing like that. Was there anything that you would describe as trauma in your background because that's another common thing. People think, well, maybe there's just trauma in sexual trauma as a child or as an adult or otherwise that, made them want to do freaky stuff.
Yeah. I don't, of course there was trauma. I've yet to talk to anyone, especially women who don't have some form of trauma in their past. Now, what that looks like for everyone is obviously different. Sometimes it's sexual trauma. Sometimes it's physical. Sometimes it's verbal. There's so many different things that can be trauma. So yes, there was a lot of trauma in my past. There was sexual abuse. There was emotional abuse. There was verbal abuse. In past relationships, there was some physical abuse. So yes, there was trauma in my past. Now, was that a catalyst for me to want to sexually explore more? I don't know. I think if it is, then maybe that was one of the positive things that came out of that trauma.
Well, yeah, because most of the time, at least in my experience growing up and having lots of adult friends with different types of background, women and men, but you hear this more with women that have sexual trauma of some kind in their past, don't have a really great sexual outlook, sex life, or a well-adjusted view on sexuality in general. Yet I've never seen you have issues with it in any way. I mean, you've had this sort of genuine curiosity, and it's never seemed to be a struggle for you. How do you attribute the well-adjusted sexual adult that I know to somebody who does have that sexual trauma? Why did it not seem to affect you more than what it tends to?
That is a hard question to answer. I think growing up the way I grew up, I always had a mindset that I was going to overcome this, no matter what it was. I wasn't going to get stuck here. I wasn't going to get stuck in this town. I was going to get stuck in this life. I would never raise my family like this. I would never be this type of mother. I would never be this type of partner. And so I think that mindset, I would seek out, I would read books, I would journal. When I was old enough to pay for it on my own, I was in therapy. I feel like I was doing the work, even though I didn't know I was doing the work to overcome that. All of those things that I did helped me heal. And I've never been bitter about the trauma. I've never been resentful. I am somebody that forgives pretty easily. I don't hold grudges. I recognized at an early age that holding on to that kind of stuff was not good.
Yeah.
And so I really don't have a clear answer for that.
Well, it's an impressive part of your personality. And because I didn't know all of that at first, it took a while for you to open up about that. And I was shocked because I assumed that since you had such a healthy outlook on sexuality, how all our communication about the topic of sex and our relationship has always been easy.
Yeah. I guess I don't open up a lot about it because I don't want to be identified by that trauma. It is part of why I am the way I am, but it's not who I am. And so I don't want sympathy for it. Like that makes me uncomfortable. And maybe that's a part of the trauma, that it makes me uncomfortable. But it doesn't define who I am.
You get through your childhood with no examples of this type, no sexual education of any kind, really.
No. In fact, the opposite. Like, though I was sexual from a very early age, and maybe that is part of the sexual trauma that I experienced as a young girl. But I can't ever remember a time in my life, as far as age-wise, that I didn't masturbate. that was part of my self-soothing, maybe, if I was stressed or anxious and couldn't sleep, it's still part of my self-soothing. But there was a lot of shame around that, obviously, growing up. I would pray, like, please, this will be the last time that I ever do this. Because I felt like there was something wrong doing with me because I wanted to masturbate. But I've been doing that as long as I can remember.
Right. So when you said earlier that you were sexual from an early age, you just meant with yourself.
Right. My mother found religion when I was in middle school. And she went from very liberal parenting and not really around. I have very few memories of my mother before fourth grade. And, I had no father growing up. And so it was just my brothers and I. And when she found religion, she went from one extreme to the other. Yeah. One extreme where, at 10, 11 years old, I was really taking care of myself. I didn't really have a bedtime. It was just kind of a free for all. She found religion, and then I couldn't wear the color red because that was the color whores wore. I couldn't wear makeup. I couldn't shave my legs. I couldn't go on dates. I couldn't date until I was 16. And then it had to be a double date. And my curfew was 8:30 until I graduated.
So good. If we should still have a curfew of 8:30.
Yeah, I would love to go to bed at 8:30.
So it was really your early 20s is where you started exploring sexuality with other people.
It's a very short window because I was married by 22.
Yeah, but from the stories I've heard, it was a very packed short window.
Yeah, I did a lot of fun things in that time. Yeah, so I had fallen in love with this guy at the age of 16, and we dated for 4 years. And we were saving ourselves for marriage, and I was literally, that was a very bad relationship. I was obsessed with him. I did everything he told me to do. I dressed the way he wanted me to. I wore, ate the way he wanted me to. And at 19, I gave him my virginity, and then found out that he had.
Wait a minute, you went 3 years?
Yeah.
So y'all just did a bunch of oral stuff, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I found out that he was not saving himself for me. So that was really why I left Chicago, was to get away from him, because I knew if I stayed there, I would stay with him. I would go back to him. And that, I really grieved the loss of that relationship for years. I would say probably close to 10 years.
Wow. So you moved, you left Chicago to get away from him. You came to Alabama. Mm-hmm. You spent maybe a couple of years where you were
sowing some wild oats.
So you did the club scene and a lot of that stuff, right? And that was where you really started exploring
sexually,
at least a large part of your sexuality, right?
Yeah. I was very sexually free, you could say. Had a lot of fun, a lot of things I don't remember. It probably wasn't the best way to sow wild. It was a little reckless. I had a lot of partners. And then
all strictly men. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then you end up settling down. You meet somebody, you get married, and it was a long-term marriage.
Yeah. So I met a guy that felt safe. Yeah. Coming out of the home that I was raised in, all I ever really wanted was my own kids and a family and a house. We lived in Section 8 housing. It wasn't the worst, but it wasn't the greatest. I wanted to have a career, and I wanted to do all those things that I, dreamed about as a young girl. And so I met a guy who was nice enough. He felt safe. He had a stable job. I knew that I wasn't what he wanted. He wanted somebody that was not really driven, that was just going to be at home, raise the kids.
A homemaker.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That just wasn't me. And I tried to be that for so long.
So much so that you went, as I understand the story, you went from this person sowing their wild oats and going to clubs and stuff to similar, and I've never said this before, but similar to what happened with your mom, in that you went from this wild child, found religion all of a sudden, and then did a complete 180.
In that marriage, we have 3 children together. After the birth of my second child, that was, he was an identical twin. We lost his brother, which was traumatic for me. And I had no family down here. And I was married to somebody who wasn't open to having conversations. So I was grieving in silence, grieving alone. And that was probably one of the lowest points of my life. I've never been suicidal, especially now that I have children. But I was having bad thoughts, and I wasn't going to church. I didn't really know anything about it, but I was going to the gym. I was still working out. That was kind of my sanity. And somebody invited me to church at the gym. And I thought, well, you know what? What I'm doing right now isn't working. Maybe God can fix this. And so I went, and all the promises church made me, God will fix your marriage. He will change that man, and he'll love you. And so I was like, well, let's try this.
And 16 years later,
yeah,
or so.
Well, no, that was 27. So I was in the church for 2 years, worked full time for the church for 10.
So about 12 years.
Yeah.
Of hoping and praying that religion.
Yeah, and God, man, I was sold out. I don't do anything half-assed. I'm sure you've noticed that.
You whole ass up everything. Yes.
If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to dive head first in. I'm in it.
Which I'm sure they recognize the church. That's why they offered you a job. And
right.
You became a women's and children's pastor
right.
Type role at the church there. And it was full-time for 10 years?
Yeah.
Okay, so to kind of summarize, and we're summarizing a lot of life here in a very short period of time to make it podcast length worthy, I guess. But you were raised in a sort of on your own by a progressive mother, and kind of almost like a latchkey kid or something for a while, and then your mother got tightened things up to where you couldn't watch the Smurfs anymore because they had magic.
Right.
She got very religious, and eventually you met this guy in high school, and then that went poorly, and you kind of, to escape all that, left to go to Alabama.
Right.
And part of that, and I don't think we talked about this, was to try to find your dad, right, or to connect with your dad.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for just a second. Why were you trying to do that? Why was he not in the picture to begin with? And how did that go?
Yeah. So he actually left when I was 1, and I never saw him again, never heard from him again. My mother had been married 4 times, and none of the other men, well, one stuck around, my brother's father, but none of us had dads around in our lives. When I was 18, my dad reached out to me, and I knew that he lived down south. And so when my relationship went sour, and I needed to get out of town, I was like, well, I don't have anywhere to go. I'll go meet my dad.
Right. See if things are better there.
Right. Let's see what happens. And so I literally packed everything I owned in my little Mazda 323 hatchback and drove from Chicago down. At that time, he was in Mississippi.
You didn't come straight to Alabama. You went to Mississippi first.
Right, right.
Okay. And then that went, well, not so
No,
great.
that didn't go so great, as you can imagine. I made some friends and stuff. I decided I was going to stay in the area because I really did like the South. Actually, it was going to be for a summer. I was going to give it a summer. And then go back home at the end of summer. And then I ended up being introduced to the person that would become my husband, and ended up staying and got a good job. And
he was from Alabama, and that's how the transition from Mississippi to Alabama happened. Okay. Yeah. And so we kind of go through a fairly wild phase there of partying and clubs and stuff, but then you get married.
Yeah.
And you try to settle down and become Susie Homemaker. You find religion, get a job at the church, and you go for a 12, 14-year period or so there. Did you recognize then that you were unhappy? And if so, what? I know you found religion in an effort to try to fix your marriage, but what do you feel like was the big thing that was missing from your life? Why were you unhappy?
It was communication. There was zero communication. There was no
With your
sharing,
husband.
right? Sharing, what your hopes and dreams were, or how you're feeling, or what is your I mean, there was just zero dialogue, besides anything that was kind of superficial, like day to day kind of things. And I was very lonely.
You kind of had sort of separate lives. You
Right.
did some things together. It's not like you were
Right.
completely miserable all the time.
Right. And he was a good dad, and
and he provided for the family,
Right.
but you guys didn't have that high adventure sort of lifestyle.
Yeah.
You kind of
Well, and for years, people didn't know I had a husband, because I did so much on my own with the kids, that he would work all the time or be gone, doing his thing, and so a lot of people they had never met him, and people who I had been friends with for 4 or 5 years had never saw him.
And so you tried to feel some of that feeling of loneliness with work,
right,
at the church, taking care of the family, work at the church,
fitness, right? Just finding something to keep me always doing something.
Did you enjoy that time at the church?
There were times that I enjoyed it, but it made me feel like I was a hamster on a wheel. Like, I can almost get to that carrot that is dangling in front of me, but I can't quite get it, which left me feeling like,
what was the carrot? What were you trying to get to?
God healing my marriage.
Oh, okay.
Right? Or making him love me, or talk to me, or tell me I'm beautiful, whatever it was. But,
which has always been crazy to me, that you said he never really told you that you were beautiful.
Yeah. He said one time he didn't want me to get a big head.
Yeah. You're one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. Way out of my league.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm super nice.
But it left me feeling really unfulfilled, and like there was something wrong with me. Why can't I do this right? So it was probably 3 to 4 years towards the end of my time working there that I started to, which I didn't know there was a word for it, but deconstruct.
Yeah, right.
At that time, I didn't know what that meant, but I started reading books that weren't in my church's library, and I got chastised for that actually one time. I had a book on my desk by a Christian author, but it wasn't one of the Christian authors we had in our bookstore. And so I got chastised for that, because I couldn't possibly know how to discern what was actual truth from...
was that because you're a woman?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. All right, so it started to kind of lose its luster, the call of religion. Mm-hmm. At that time also was the same time you and I met for the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I had opened a gym in town, and you came to visit right before we had gotten open.
Yeah.
You visited where we were sort of practicing, if you want to call it that. And I was sort of starstruck. You're just bigger than life, beautiful person. You seem to have it all together. You're in this great marriage. I didn't know that there was stuff sort of bubbling under the surface.
Yeah. Well, you had a CrossFit gym, and I love competition. And so CrossFit was just like, of course, I'm going to do this. This is, I could see a change in my body composition. I felt good. It was fun. There's a community of people that I could hang out with. I met a bunch of friends. And really, because I had been doing fitness my whole life, and I had done personal training early before, and I had taught Pilates and yoga and stuff like that. So I'm like, this just seems like something I want to do. And so I started, I think, coaching for you about a year after I started doing CrossFit.
You were very good at it right away.
Yeah.
And very, you were just great with people.
Yeah.
And so me asking you to coach was a no-brainer.
And I would volunteer for everything.
Yes.
Just because I could bring the kids a lot of the times with me. I had a lot of free time because my ex-husband was gone hunting all the time or working all the time. So I had the time to do it, and I loved doing it. So I'm like, yeah, of course I'll do this. And I was warned by my boss at the church, though, that was a slippery slope.
What, fitness?
Well, being at the CrossFit gym all the time.
Why? Because there were
because
other people
it could be pulling me away from the church.
Well, to his credit, he may be right about that. Yeah. Because that process, over the time that you were becoming this CrossFit athlete, CrossFit coach, you were also going through that process of deconstructing
right.
from the church,
Yeah,
or at least questioning. And you may not even been consciously aware of it that whole time, but that was all happening around the same time. Do you think it had anything to do with your eventual interest in non-monogamy?
No, I think it had to do with me looking for happiness, looking for a place that I felt I could be myself, authenticity. I just was looking for something. I didn't know what it was, but I was looking for something. And I knew I wasn't happy where I was.
And you and I had fun working together.
We did. Yeah.
Platonically for 4 years or so.
100% plutonic.
No.
Never crossed the line, never flirted, never. Maybe we flirted, but I didn't think it was flirting at the time, but it probably was.
It probably was. And I can tell you I was thinking it. But, I was also very religious.
Right.
You were very religious. We're both in marriages. You just, that's not a possibility.
Right.
And, but eventually I think the toll of your marriage not fulfilling you, and mine not either. We'll talk about that on another day. But eventually we went from coach and boss relationship and friend relationship, and we took it a step further.
Right.
And it's not an aspect of the story that we're proud of.
No, absolutely not. So I had actually asked my husband for a divorce in maybe October of 2015. And then it was a couple months later that you and I started
seeing each other.
Yeah. That's not an excuse. We handled it. We went about it the wrong way. Had I to do it over again, I would have handled it a lot differently. But I do not regret being with you.
Me either. But I know that what we did and the way we went about it caused a lot of pain in people's lives.
Absolutely.
And it became somewhat of a mini scandal in our community. A lot of people knew you because you were at the church. A lot of people knew me and you because of the gym.
Right.
And our lives sort of fell apart there for a little bit. Talk about, from your perspective, what happened there and how it impacted you.
Yeah, that was tough because at the time the whole time I was married, I was really good at putting on a smile. In fact, my mother said she had some ideas that things weren't great, but she never knew because I never told her. I never told anybody because I wanted them to love him. And, I hid a lot from my kids because that's what you do as a mother. You protect your children from things. My friends, nobody really knew what was going on, and nobody ever does know what's going on inside of marriage. So I want to say that before you judge somebody, you don't know what is happening behind closed doors.
And even if you are being told what's happening, you still don't really have
a full picture. I was unhappy for years, and I think it would be safe to say my ex-husband was unhappy for years as well. So when we were outed, when the affair became public, we essentially both lost everything, our jobs, our homes.
Because in a small town, an affair can have implications outside of your family.
Right. Yeah. And so I was immediately labeled the town whore.
Also probably accurate.
Well, they didn't know the extent.
Well, you didn't at that time.
Yeah. And so, I still had 3 kids in school, and I would have to go to their games and walk in and not a soul would speak to me. And I would have to sit by myself and know that people were saying things to my kids. And we had a woman in town who was a pastor's wife message one of my kids to tell him what a whore his mother was on Instagram. So things like that were happening.
You weren't wearing a literal scarlet A on
I actually contemplated it, because what ended up happening was through that, nobody at the church spoke to me anymore. I was chastised, kicked out of the church without even realizing it. I didn't know it.
You were never called in to tell them. They just announced that you would never be back.
Well, I went in and they told me, obviously I could no longer work there, but I still intended on going to church there, mostly because I wanted to keep my kids on some sort of normalcy. Like that's what they knew.
Yeah, because even though you were transitioning ultimately away from religion. You didn't really know at that
how
point,
to handle that. I didn't know at that point, but I didn't know how to handle it with my children.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I was going to still keep them with their friends. There was an announcement made, though, that I would no longer be back at church. So that was a pretty shitty thing. But that really solidified in my mind my exodus of religion. Probably the second lowest point in my life. But it really taught me compassion and empathy for other people, and really helped me learn to love people in a much deeper way.
Yeah.
Because I would never I would never treat somebody like that. I would never judge anybody. And when I see people going through similar things or a divorce, I have so much compassion and empathy for them, because no matter what the story is, we don't know what the story is. And we don't know how they feel when they're alone by themselves. So that gave me a lot of compassion.
But somebody having an affair is an easy target for public scorn.
Right.
And you got your fair share of it in that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so now you're jobless because you lose your job at the church, and you lost your job at my gym because I lost my gym.
Right. Yeah.
Over all of this.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you lost your job at the church. You lost your job at the gym. Now your family is falling apart because of the affair. And the process begins at this point for you of going, well, what's next?
Yeah.
How did that feel, having to essentially start over with nothing?
So I knew I was good at coaching. I knew I was good at, nutrition coaching and fitness coaching. And so I went to another town, because obviously I couldn't work in our town.
Yeah, because you were poor.
Right. I had actually gotten kicked out of another gym that I just went to work out at.
In our hometown.
And they kicked me out because of the affair.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't even let me be a member there. And so.
On your first day there.
Yeah.
They saw you coming.
Crazy stuff. So we went to another town, found a gym, and I talked to the owner, and I just told her, look, this is what happened. I need a job. And she was gracious enough to give me a job. While working there, she got calls that she was going against God by letting me work for her.
She did let you work there, and it sort of acted as a bridge to what we're about to get to. But so you go through this period of a year or two where you're sort of just kind of working and getting little part-time type money just to make ends meet. And that's when the deconstruction from religion really kicked in for you, because you had to figure out who you were and what you wanted the rest of your life to look like.
Right.
And you and I were now trying to build a relationship through the ashes of this exposed affair we had. Do you remember a time where you decided, I am done with religion? Or did you ever decide that?
I would say it was a pretty quick transition. Once I decided how I was going to approach it with my children, and which I allow them to believe what they want to believe. There's no judgment. I allow them to ask questions. I will support whatever they believe. And once I had those conversations with them and made sure that they were safe and felt loved and cared for and weren't scared by me not believing, it was almost like a switch went off. And I was like, okay, I'm walking away from this and I feel peace about it. And I really have been in that place since.
Also, during that time, you and I were continuing to explore consensual non-monogamy.
Right.
We didn't get to do it a lot because we didn't have any money, but we
or
would
time.
We would here and there, we would go to events. Was there ever conflict as that process was happening? You're slowly deconverting from religion. We're trying to rebuild our lives. You're starting to explore consensual non-monogamy. Was there ever moral conflict there? Like, oh, these are not things I should be doing. The Bible says so. Religion says so. Church says so.
No, there was never that kind of stuff. There was, and maybe there was. There was a little bit of sexual shame. Like, is this okay? But I don't know that it was a religious thing. It was just maybe some things that had brought up from past trauma. That like, ooh, is this okay for me to do to my body? But that passed quickly. that I didn't sit with that for a long time.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, well, you know what? I'm doing it. I like it. I enjoy it. It feels good. This is my body. I think really what came out of me being exiled from the church, me getting a divorce and having a nasty divorce, was this indignation that, you know what, this is my life and I'm going to write my own story. And I don't give a shit what anybody else has to say about it. I know who I am. I love my children. I'm a wonderful mother. I've never questioned that. This is my life. And whatever anybody else thinks about it, they can go fuck themselves.
Amen. Amen. Preach it, sister. I remember us sitting out at my dad's lake house at the time, and we're both like going through this somewhat state of depression. Like, where do we go from here? We've lost everything.
Right.
And I do remember that conversation where you're like, well, I don't know where we go from here, but I know one thing: we're going to do it our way.
Yeah.
And we have one of the silver lining to the cloud of us being exposed as terrible people was that it really freed us to no longer care so much about what other people thought.
Right.
And we started the process from that lake house, rebuilding our life.
Right. Yeah. And we weren't victims in that story.
No, we brought that on ourselves.
Never tried to paint ourselves as victims or had a victim mentality. We made apologies to everyone that would listen to us. Some people wouldn't, and that's okay. But I think what a lot of people wanted us to do was apologize and then do what they wanted us to do. They wanted us to say, I'm sorry that we had an affair. I'm going to go back to my husband. I'm sorry I had an affair. I'm going to go back to church. I'm sorry I had an affair. I'm never going to have sex with anyone else again.
I'm going to get my life right.
Right. But that's not what we said. We said, we are sorry, truly and deeply, for the pain that we caused others. We should not have done that. But moving forward, this is our life and we're going to live it. And people don't like that.
Especially, it seems like in more conservative areas of the country, they don't like independent, free thought people living the life the way they want. People to abide by society's norms.
Yeah, this is our box. You need to get in it and stay in it.
Yeah, and we both decided that wasn't going to happen, and we stuck to that. So,
I don't know if you've ever seen me color, but I can't stay inside the lines.
I don't doubt it. I imagine you can't even come close.
We would like to invite you to a first of its kind event unlike anything ever done at Hedonism Resort in Negril, Jamaica. It's called Be Better at Being Bad Week. This is the fittest party in the lifestyle.
Now, this doesn't mean you have to be a hard body to attend. This party's for anyone and everyone who wants to improve their relationship and communication dynamics, increase their sexual health, learn better wellness practices, and explore and expand their mind, body, and sexuality.
Experts from around the world will descend on Hedo to help you be better at being bad. Daily keynote talks, interactive technique sessions at the nude and prude pools, exciting competitions and workouts, integration workshops on cannabis and psychedelics, intimate couples yoga, speed dating, and workshops in the Kama Sutra Palace. All the nightly themed parties and entertainment that you've come to expect from Hedo, and the grand finale, the Red Ball.
This event is perfect for people exploring the idea of opening their relationship. Special sessions led by the Naughty Gym team of experts will guide you through various Q&A and orientation sessions to help you get to know your fellow attendees.
Veterans of the lifestyle can expect all the same high-energy sexy parties and electrifying entertainment that made Hedo famous, with a little extra flair from the Be Better at Being Bad team.
Everyone will leave with a wealth of new tools and experiences curated by our all-star team of professionals designed to improve your journey through consensual non-monogamy.
So what are you waiting for? Join us January 6th through the 13th of 2024 at Hedonism Resorts for Be Better at Being Bad Week, and get ready for the fittest party in the lifestyle.
Eventually, we get exposed to about people know we've been exploring the lifestyle.
Right.
So that's all part of the scandal that we're having an affair, we're dabbling in being these crazy swingers. And that was an embarrassing part of the story, at least early on for us, right? And we tried to put a blanket over that and cover it up as much as possible. Did you feel like you should hide that part of yourself?
I didn't want to hide that part of myself. I think I felt like I should, just because it wasn't anybody's business. And I knew it scared people. I just more or less didn't want to have the conversations with people. I thought it was unnecessary. It wasn't their business, but I wasn't ashamed of it.
In this,
If you're talking about consensual non-monogamy.
Right. Well, and
right.
I'm getting to this point. So we're trying to figure out where we go now. We've got to support ourselves. And you get a phone call or two from some very close friends, supporters of us, even though that they knew about our affair, they knew what had happened, but they were members at my original gym.
Yeah.
And they wanted to know, hey, are you guys ever going to start your own gym together? That was an encouraging thing for us to hear from some of the people that were members and friends from our old gym, asking us to start one. So we went about that process of getting that started.
Right.
But we knew that it would be problematic if you started a gym or I started a gym and people were talking about us being swingers.
Yeah.
So we started trying to make sure we kept that part private.
Right. Right. I think that goes along with the fact that I knew everyone was talking anyways. It was something that I could just put out of my head. And, we decided to open a gym. I have something to focus on now. I'm going to power through. I'm going to do what I need to do to get this gym open, to get members coming in, to get our bills paid, to make sure my kids are doing okay. What I'm doing in my sex life is nobody's business. If they're going to talk about it, they're going to talk about it. That just wasn't a concern of mine.
Yeah, and part of our thinking was that, all right, as long as we keep this completely private and nobody ever finds out again, they'll forget about that one time people may have found out we were swingers and assume we've moved on.
Right.
And so that's what happens. The gym starts to grow. You do a great job as a gym owner. And so we put that part of our life, not out of our life, but very much on the back burner.
Yeah.
Because you had to build this business up. We had to pay our bills.
Yeah.
That took a backseat to rebuilding our life.
Right. Yeah. Not that we weren't still having the conversations and talking about it, because we still talked about it very openly, and maybe once or twice a year would get away to go to an event or something like that.
Right. And it was a big deal because it was so rare for us. So the gym starts to grow over a 2 or 3 year period or so there. And then COVID hits.
Oh, yeah.
COVID had a big impact on the rest of our story.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't crazy yet, the story gets really crazy from this point forward.
Yeah.
We had, after you bought or opened your gym, had the opportunity to buy a second gym in about the town 30 minutes away. And so we decided you would run the one you had opened in our hometown, and then I would run this new one.
Right.
And that had been going for 2 or 3 years. Both gyms were doing well. COVID hits, and all of a sudden we've got to shut them both down.
Yeah.
In that 2-month period that we shut down, we get to work together again because now we're working from home together. We had been missing.
Which, by the way, if you enjoyed being home during COVID because you were doing house projects and planting gardens and repainting your house, we did none of that. We were working 24/7. I mean, it was exhausting.
But we loved it.
But we did love it.
Instead of working in separate towns, running separate gyms, now we're working together.
Yeah.
And at least we're sitting on the couch next to each other.
Right.
Working. The end of that 2-month quarantine period, we realized we were about to get to open back up, and we both seemed not super happy about it. Do you remember that period? I know.
I was dreading it. When the governor said you can reopen like a week from today, I didn't want to say anything, but I was like, oh God, I don't want to do this without you anymore. I mean, that was our goal, was always to work together because we work so well together. You are good at things that I'm not good at, and vice versa. You came to me one morning at maybe 6 a.m. You woke me up, which is never a good thing to do to your spouse. You wake them up with tears in your eyes and say, we have to talk.
Yeah, I should have thought that through a little better.
I was like, is he leaving me? And you said you wanted to sell your gym. And I was like, yes, let's do it, because that would put us both working together again. And so We went through the process of selling that other gym. Your business partner and one of your coaches ended up buying it. Now we had to figure out a way to pull two incomes from the one gym.
Yeah. Right.
And so you came up with the idea of Naughty Gym, which we had learned to coach people online during COVID,
Right.
and to program for people online and how to deliver it effectively and do Zoom calls with clients. And so it just made sense. But you wanted to find a niche market. What is a demographic of people who want to be fit and want to look better naked? The non-monogamous community.
We really began this plan of trying to work together on the gym that you had opened,
Right.
and then start learning or building this new business online where we were going to be promoting online coaching for people.
More importantly, and I want to say this, is we didn't want to just deliver health and fitness and nutrition coaching. We love CrossFit and we love the community aspect of it. And we wanted to create that online as well, or that community where you could feel like you could be yourself, but you could connect with people. And it wasn't just fitness and nutrition, right?
Right. And so we began the process of building that business and that platform. Mm-hmm. And that dramatically changed our life.
Yeah.
I don't think we anticipated how much it would change it. But one of the things that we were excited about was, we might get to be involved in more consensual non-monogamy events.
Yeah.
Because we have this business now.
Yeah.
Talk about how that changed our dynamic in the lifestyle, how we went from what did our lifestyle look like prior to that decision, mm-hmm. and then what has it looked like since then?
Prior to that, we would go to one, maybe two events a year, and we really didn't do anything at them either, right?
Not much.
Because we didn't know anybody. And so afterwards, now we're being invited to come to these events as Naughty Gym. We're putting people through workouts in, face to face. And so we went from one or two small events a year to we were going to 3, 4, 5, 6 big events every year, and then smaller weekend events.
Yeah.
And then we met friends, and we've made our best friends. And it's been, our life is lifestyle now, right? That is who we are. That's our community. Those are our people. That is just now woven into the fabric of our lives.
That's true. But one of the big fears we had was we knew that we were going to do everything we could to hide this gym business. We talked to tech savvy people and said, all right, how do we put a shield around this that insulates it from our commercial gym? Because we didn't want our commercial gym people to know about it. We didn't want our community to know about this business.
Or our families. And when we started Naughty Gym, I made the decision that I was not going to show nudity. We weren't going to show nudity on any platform.
Not that there was anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Right. But just because I have children and I wanted to be respectful of them. I'm not saying it's disrespectful. I have plenty of friends that have OnlyFans and show nudity, and their kids know. That's great. But I know my children. So we didn't. And so we both knew that it was a possibility that we'd be outed someday. And so we had a lot of extensive conversations about, what if this happens? Then what? If this happens, then what? And so when we got outed.
Yeah, because before you talk about getting outed, the big concern was if we get outed, when we get outed.
Right.
Could we lose our commercial gym, our foundation for our income?
Right.
Could we lose it? How bad would the fallout be?
Right. And I was less worried about that than you were. Yeah. I maybe should have been more worried about it.
I think ultimately I ended up being right on this one.
Well, here's why I wasn't as concerned, because when we opened our commercial business, our mission was to be an inclusive environment where people can get the tools that they need to be healthier.
And we were public about that.
And by inclusive, I meant LGBTQ plus, anybody, any religion, any race, any creed are welcome here. And we meant that. And we hosted LGBTQ events and we had transgender members. And so I thought, you know what? If we get outed as swingers, nobody in our community is going to care, because why would they? It doesn't affect the service that we're delivering them. We're not talking about it openly. So it's not like we're not putting it in their face. It's something that we do in our free time, in privacy, in our own bedrooms. And so I was really surprised by what happened.
Because we pushed forward with the Naughty Gym concept because we believed that our commercial gym could survive the exposure if it were to happen.
Right.
If it happened.
Yeah.
And so we did. We probably kept it more or less hidden for, I don't know, a year or year and a half, maybe something like that. And then we were on a podcast. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the first podcast we had been on. We had been on 4 or 5 before that. Yeah. And this one podcast, for whatever reason, got spread around our community like wildfire.
We know why, but
like wildfire. And all of a sudden, it seemed like everybody in our town knew about it. And I know not everybody, but there is a lot of anybody that knows us about all know about it now.
Yeah.
What was the fallout? So
we lost close to 50% of our membership in the span of 2 months. At first, we didn't know why. Like 1 week, we lost like 10. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, they were submitting their cancellations. There was a few that gave us the courtesy and the respect to sit down in our office and tell us what they had heard.
Yeah, but it took a couple of weeks. We couldn't figure out what was going on. It was spreading through the community.
Right. We had an idea, but we weren't for sure, because also at the time we were distracted because my parents were sick.
Right. Yeah, I was about to get to that.
Yeah. Right. So I will say kudos to the members who loved us enough to sit down and talk with us, because the rumors that were going on were much worse than what was actual reality. The rumors that were going around was that we were filming porn here in the gym and naked, forcing people to work out naked and just ridiculous stuff. And I'm like, look, the service that I'm offering you is the same service that we offer our online members. It's just wrapped up in a cuter, sexier package. What I didn't understand was I am the same person sitting here as I am doing a session with one of my clients. I don't hit on them. I'm not being sexual with them. I'm not talking sexually with them. I am professional. It just really baffled me at some of the small-mindedness, I guess.
Well, we probably had 2 different groups leave.
Right.
Some people left because they didn't like what we were doing personally. They didn't like it.
Right.
Some people left because they didn't want the pressure of people saying, oh, you work out at that swinger gym.
Right. And that I could understand.
Yeah.
And I had sympathy for, because, we talked to a couple people who were like, look, I go to church and people are asking me if I'm going to that swinger gym, and I don't want, my husband or my wife to have any doubts. And I'm like, I respect that. I respect that honesty more than anything. And we love those people still to this day. We still are in contact with a lot of them that came to us and were honest with us. We still talk to and love them.
So it happened over a summer. This is in the middle of COVID. Mm-hmm. And over that fall is when your parents both contracted COVID.
Right.
At the same time, or within just a few days of each other. And now, on top of the fact that we have been publicly outed as having not only just being consensual non-monogamous or swingers, we have a swinger business, and our business plummets.
Yeah.
And then both of your parents get sick, and this wasn't just a mild case of COVID.
Right.
Let's talk about that period, because that was in a very difficult time.
Yeah, we took that hit. And then I spent the next 3 months with my parents in the hospital fighting COVID, away from the gym essentially. But I couldn't even, you can't process. I was in kind of like that fight or flight mode, because my mother got sick at the end of August. My stepdad was sick at the time, but we didn't know how bad And so she was in the hospital, went into the hospital August 26th. He went into the hospital September 2nd. And they both never left the hospital. Yeah. So, and it was a fight with the hospital too, because we couldn't see them. They were alone and they were scared. And that was just an absolute horrific way.
And just to paint the proper picture here, it's one thing if a parent, and it's dreadful if a parent goes through this.
Yeah.
Because then the other parent, the other spouse, their spouse is not only having to take care of them and runs the risk of losing them, but they're having to take care of all their family stuff,
Right.
pay all their bills, keep the house up and stuff. But when both of them are in the hospital,
Right.
nobody's paying their bills.
Right.
Nobody's bringing in income. Nobody's taking care of their stuff.
Right.
And not only did you have to work on this process of grieving with them through this, but now you had to take over their family affairs.
Right.
Because you were the only sibling here in town.
Right.
So everything is starting to fall apart in your life.
Right.
Over this summer and fall.
Yeah.
And, looking during that process, there was no good. There was no silver lining to any of that cloud.
Right. Yeah.
Looking back.
And there was, at times it felt like there was no end in sight.
But looking back, I see a woman who powered through like a champion, something that would have tore down and ruined them, potentially for the rest of their life. And we got very close to losing our commercial gym.
Yeah, we did. We did.
But we saved it.
Yeah.
And you got through this issue with your parents. They ultimately ended up passing away within 5 days of each other. And I watched you sit by their bedside as they pulled the plug. Having just gone through all of this stuff yourself, now you're having to watch your parents die. Mm-hmm. You had to help make the decision to pull that plug. And I think you became an even stronger person on the other side of that, because I have never seen a person care more for people while caring less about what people thought about your life choices since then.
Yeah.
You've become this empowered, wonderful human being who tries to empower others and to spread this message of live life the way you want to live it.
I feel like if somebody can go through something like that and not treat people better, there's something wrong with them. If you can't see the humanity, I mean, it really blows my mind when I meet people that are just have no ability or self-awareness to see others. I feel like I see people better since I lost my parents, since going through that. And I love people harder because of everything that I've gone through.
Especially people that accept us for who we are.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wish everybody could have people in their lives like we have. And that really, going through those maybe 6 months, that summer and fall, we had people really rally around us who are in the lifestyle community and are really true friends that really,
and some that weren't in the lifestyle community,
poured love into us.
Yeah, that period of our life has acted as a filter that has taught us who our true friends are, and really has taught us how to filter our relationships with other people going forward.
Absolutely.
I wish it didn't take that for us.
Yeah.
But it feels like it has, because we have been flawlessly executing, filtering our life out since then.
Yeah.
Since then, you have rebuilt this gym. It's back to basically where it was before.
Yeah.
We have grown Naughty Gym together, and we've traveled the world going to events and getting to speak. And tell me since you've gotten on the other side of all of that heartache, what have you enjoyed the most about the rebuilding of things from that fallout?
Oh, that's a What have I enjoyed the most? Being on the other side for sure. I don't know that I'm over it. I think it's just something you kind of carry with you. Grief is a weird thing, and it's so, it's different every day. There's joy in it. There's anger in it. There's confusion in it. I wasn't able to process my grief right away, as you know, because I just, as soon as my parents passed, I dove headfirst back into the gym and started rebuilding. And so it took a while for me to realize that I wasn't giving myself space to grieve. I don't know that that process ever ends. It just evolves. But I think what I'm loving right now about this time in our life is that I'm able to give myself more space to grieve and to process and to really be present with myself and my emotions. And I feel like I really haven't had a lot of that kind of time in my life. And I really enjoy that. It feels empowering.
Yeah. Well, it's inspirational to watch from the outside. I mean, I'm kind of on the inside, but yeah, I mean, I look up to you as, you know, it's hard to imagine me ever going through anything worse than the period you went through. And I know we went through it, but, you know, it wasn't my parents, it was yours. And it was just a brutally tough time that could have destroyed a relationship that may have not been on as solid foundation as ours. Because it was not easy getting through that. We had to navigate a lot. We came out the other side and we're better for it. But now looking forward, we seem to have stabilized our commercial gym from all of that fallout, and Naughty Gym is growing. And the community, the lifestyle community, has embraced it. It seems like, and we've been fortunate enough to get to go to a lot of these events. Have you enjoyed that process of? Because before COVID, we were just in consensual non-monogamy. We just occasionally went to things.
Yeah.
Now we get to go to more, but we're also doing it under the banner of a business.
Yeah.
Has that changed your outlook on consensual non-monogamy?
No, I don't think it has, because I still don't, when we go to these events, I'm genuinely going to make authentic connections. And we're going as Naughty Gym a lot of times, but I don't look at it as work. I look at it as helping people on their journey. And that is so fun to me, to meet somebody who said, you know, we've got some good friends in Canada who said Naughty Gym changed our lives because we came out of COVID and we had put on weight and my health was poor and I lost 30 pounds and I have a new lease on life. And I'm like, oh my God, if they only knew what dorks we were, like, it's amazing. I love it.
It's very interesting when we go to an event and people come up and introduce themselves because they want to introduce themselves to the Naughty Gym people.
Yeah. And I'm so awkward. I'm like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Well, so we've been in the lifestyle now for roughly 8 years. Would you say that overall that it has been a positive experience for you?
Yeah, I would. With everything that's happened, I think it's still been a really positive experience for me.
And it's not always been easy, especially after we started the business side, the Naughty Gym stuff. We realized that, you know, there's drama behind the scenes with some things. And we got very close even to shutting Naughty Gym down early on because we accidentally stepped into some drama we didn't know existed. But you sort of led through that too. Yeah. You know, you kind of said, no, look, we're going to push through this and figure it out, just like we figured out how to salvage this gym.
Well, and that mindset was developed that nobody's going to dictate to me how I'm going to live my life. Nobody's going to dictate to me how I run my business. I'm not going to do it. I've done that before. I've played that role before where I let people tell me what to do and how to do it. I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm thankful that you stand by my side when I say that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're mean about it, but you know. do you think is the biggest reason not us, but and I know it's us that do these things together, but what do you think is the biggest reason right now you've been successful in the sense that we were able to go through all of that turmoil and come out the other side better for it? What do you think is the biggest reason you've been successful?
Because I love people. I think that's it. I have really good intuition too.
Would you say that I do?
No, it's okay. It's okay. But I think that's it. I think people know when somebody's genuine. People know when somebody is putting on a front. We are genuine. We love people. And I think that is the best marketing we could have, is being who we are and interacting with people in an authentic way.
At this point in our life, all our family knows.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of my family knows. Your kids know.
Yeah.
Not all of your family knows.
Right.
Are you worried about everybody else eventually finding out?
I'm not. My parents passed, so that would have been a concern. My kids know. My kids are loved. My kids love me. I have a great relationship with all of my kids. Anybody else that finds out, I'm happy to answer any questions, but this is my life.
That's a perfect segue into what do you want if somebody were to see this?
Yeah.
That had heard about you maybe. And,
yeah.
And they think what most of us probably think if we don't know anything about the lifestyle or consensual non-monogamy.
Right.
You're just trying to have sex. Why are you so weird? You're freaks, be normal.
Right.
What do you want people to know?
I am normal.
Well, you're not normal at all. But what would you like to tell people that would question your choice to be involved in this type of lifestyle? What do you get out of it? How do you make them understand why you're involved?
Oh, I don't know that you can make people understand unless they have a willingness to understand. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that my family who knows me and loves me already knows that I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. They may not know the backstory to why I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, but they know that. And so I would be happy to answer any questions. I feel freer than I've ever felt in my life. I feel more empowered than I've ever felt in my life. I don't think I have to, explain it to them. I mean, if they want to know, I'll tell them. I don't know that they'll understand.
No. Early on, you were very private about everything that we do.
Yeah.
For good reason. We were trying to protect the business, trying to protect the kids.
Right.
We get outed, and over that period, you have become much more outspoken.
Yeah.
And much less concerned about what people think about you.
Yeah.
Are you happy that we were outed?
I am. Yeah. I think getting outed was a good thing. Number one, because may sound like a sales pitch, I think Naughty Gym is fucking amazing. I think the service that we give people and the community that we provide people is a much needed thing. It excites me to see our members engaging and making progress and having deeper, more authentic relationships and connections with their spouses and other people in the lifestyle. So if somebody asks me about it, it excites me to tell them about it. Like, I think it's the coolest fucking thing ever.
Well, good. Well, so what do you hope? It's growing.
Yeah. I want other people to feel the freedom that we feel in our relationship, in our life. And I mean, there's so many people in our area, so many people that reach out to us. I mean, not daily, but weekly for sure. We get messages from people that are either have a non-monogamous relationship or their partner and them are talking about it.
Yes, it's a shock. Sometimes it's shocking, the people that are messaging us. And it feels good to be able to help.
Yeah.
Or to be a conduit for people who would, because we knew what it was like to not be able to talk about this stuff.
It feels good to be a safe space for them.
And so we're going to have a local little meet and greet here coming up.
Yeah, in
We
Huntsville.
do our own trips now where
Yeah.
we bring people together. What is your hope for this? What is if there's any big hope for the future, what would you love to see for your life from a business perspective in the lifestyle going forward?
I would love to do Naughty Gym full time, to be able to go to these events and meet people and help people on their health and fitness journey, on their non-monogamous journey. That's what I love. We did at Hedo, and we're going to actually do a little plug at Be Better at Being Bad in January 6th through the 13th at Hedonism Resort. We did mimosas with April and shots with Scott. At Hedo, we did that for the newbies. And so we had probably 10 girls and 10 guys.
Yeah, this wasn't our event. This was
another event at Hedo. But we're going to do this at Be Better at Being Bad again. And the women all just came in and sat down, and we just started openly talking. What are we scared of? What are our vulnerabilities? What are our biggest fears and insecurities? And what happens when you start talking, even with strangers, is a bond forms with all of these women. And now we're friends and we're safety nets. And the same thing happened with the men. And so now you go out onto the resort and you're going about your day and you're sitting at the pool and maybe you're feeling a little uncomfortable or a little way, but now you can look across the pool and you've got a friend. And you've got someone you can connect with. And I saw these women connecting all week long and pairing up together because now they had somebody that they were friends with, and it made them feel safer and more secure. And it was just a really beautiful thing. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. We both do. We love bringing people together. We've been doing that long before we were we had Naughty Gym. We were doing that in our commercial gym. We were doing events and trips and stuff like that because we love to see a group of people together that we brought together having a great time.
Yeah. Our tagline for Naughty Gym is never stop playing.
It's on your shirt.
Oh, yeah, right there. And it is something that we actively try to promote and try to show people.
Yeah.
Life should be fun. You should be living life open and free and exploring everything it has to offer because, again, you're only getting one shot at this life. And it has been it's been my privilege to share this journey with you, even though we got it started in a way where that maybe wasn't great, but to be a part of this journey with you this late in life. It's
not that late in life.
Well, it's a little later for me than it is you, but to watch you navigate this in a way that I don't think most people can do, to be quite honest, has been inspirational to me, and I'm just proud to be your husband and partner, and
I love you.
People are lucky that they get to know you. So,
thanks.
All right, so that's enough about April. In our next episode, we will talk about what everybody wants to hear about, and that's me.
And pickleball.
Well, that's the first podcast episode, and we'll do another one soon, we hope. So,
Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks for listening, guys.
Bye, guys.